A double murder by a random stranger at a birthday celebration. What could be more terrifying than that? It was the 5th of June 2020 when 46-year-old Bibaa Henry and her sister, 27-year-old Nicole Smallman, they'd been in Friant Country Park in Wembley, North London with their friends, celebrating Bibaa's birthday. Bibaa was a social worker. She had a real passion for her work and her friends. And Nicole was a freelance photographer. Both worked hard, but they also loved to relax, particularly by enjoying music and festivals. The sisters had a great time, and after their friends had left the park, they stayed to listen to music and dance, holding fairy lights on a beautiful summer's evening. They took photographs as they danced and they laughed, enjoying the celebration, their time together. It was a magical evening. But when the sisters failed to come home that evening, their friends were worried, and some went to the park to look for them. The sisters' worried loved ones had reported them missing to the police, but officers weren't deployed to the park until the next day. But before the police even arrived on the scene, Nicole's partner, he knew that Nicole would never have not come home to look after their pet bearded dragon, and he made an appalling discovery. When he found both of their glasses on the grass, not far from a knife, he was still on the phone to the police when tragically he found the dead bodies of the two sisters. And with their terrible injuries, it was clear they'd been murdered. Bibaa had actually been stabbed 8 times, and Nicole was stabbed 28 times before their bodies were dragged under hedges, and all the items they'd been enjoying so much at the party were found dumped in a pond. Detectives immediately knew they were looking for a very dangerous man, assuming it was a man, and they appealed widely for anyone to come forward who could help with the inquiry. Detective Chief Inspector Simon Harding, who led the inquiry, did have some clues left behind by the killer. They included the murder weapon, there were gloves, and there was also DNA on the bottles the sisters had taken for the celebration that evening. He made media appeals for information about somebody who may have cut their hand recently after an amount of blood not belonging to the two women was identified. Swabs from them and the knife produced male DNA, which was labelled unknown 1, that unfortunately was not a match to any person currently on the database. And in response to the inquiries, nobody came forward, but someone had to know. However, there was a breakthrough by the end of June when the National Crime Agency used familial DNA techniques to identify a man called Kamal Hussein as a close relative of the suspected killer. The agency had Kamal's DNA after he'd been cautioned for just a minor offence some time before. And this brought detectives to Kamal's son, 18-year-old Daniel Hussein, who was known to them. It was in October 2017 that teachers found some worrying material that Daniel had accessed on school computers, including far-right propaganda. He was referred by his school to the Prevent Anti-Terror scheme that's been in the news so much recently, as there were concerns that he was susceptible to being radicalised and vulnerable to violent extremism. Detectives found that Daniel Hussein split his time between his dad's house in Wembley and his mum's home in southeast London. His dad lived near the park where the attack had taken place, and detectives discovered that Daniel Hussein had used his passport to prove his age while buying a knife block at a nearby Asda 2 days before the killings. And that knife block, it matched the knife used in the murders. CCTV near the house was then examined, and it showed Daniel Hussein heading back to his dad's house at about 4 a.m. on the night of the murders, which fitted with when a suspect would have left the park. Just after an hour after they'd found that information, police raided the home of Daniel's mum in southeast London. They found Daniel, and also there, they found inside a paper pouch a pendant chain and some very disturbing handwritten notes. One of them was addressed to Queen Byleth and signed by Daniel. Queen Byleth is, according to black magic texts, so I'm told, linked to the king of hell, King Byleth. One side of the paper said the following: My requests. Making girl X fall deeply in love with me to the point where she isn't sexually interested, nor romantically, in anybody but me. Number two is to make X girl believe and see that I'm the only one for her. Number three, make girl X fall so deeply in love with me where she shows and expresses her love for me. Number four, making me more attractive to women romantically. The other side of the sheet read: Queen Byleth, your requests. Every 2 weeks, burn incense in your name, offer some sweet drink, offer chocolate, buy more red candles, offer some blood. I agree to uphold the request made and to uphold my side of the agreement. Signed by Daniel. Another handwritten note, signed in his own blood, was found, and this was even more sinister. He had made a pact with a demon called, excuse my pronunciation, Lucifuge Rofakal. According to a black magic book, this demon is in charge of hell's government and treasury by order of Lucifer. In this note, Danielle agreed to murder 6 women every 6 months in return for financial reward, including winning the Mega Millions Super Jackpot. At this time, the prize pool was 321 million. There was even sign on this letter for Lucifer to sign. Next to the note were 3 lottery tickets for £17.50, and they were bought on June the 7th, the day after the murders of Bibaa and Nicole, and further checks showed that other lottery tickets had been bought in the week following the murders. It seemed that Hussein's dad had long been concerned that his son had fallen into the wrong crowd, but he'd no idea just what his son had become involved with. It seemed that by the time of the COVID lockdown in 2020, Hussein was heavily involved in this demon cult. But how had he got involved? Well, after his arrest, the police searched his tablets, computer, as you'd expect, and his laptop, finding that as well as his use of forums discussing spells and potions linked to satanic ideology, they also found he'd been researching the far right. But a concern for detectives was that Hussein wouldn't help them unlock the iPad, and it seemed that Apple wouldn't help either. A fact that concerned and frustrated detectives who wanted to find out who else he might have been talking to and how he'd first got involved and drawn in to this world that led to such tragedy. Hussein, who had no previous convictions, told detectives he was innocent and he had a bad memory and suffered from Asperger's syndrome. He said the cuts on his hand that could still be seen were caused when he was robbed recently. He also claimed that somebody else wrote the agreement to sacrifice women for a lottery win, and that the blood found at the scene and the CCTV footage of him buying knives for the attack and heading back to his dad's house, that wasn't him. But detectives, of course, didn't believe him, and he was charged with murder. Hussein pleaded not guilty to murder, and he refused to give evidence in court. The evidence against him was, of course, absolutely damning, and the QC for the defense summed up the situation very succinctly, I think, in his closing remarks, saying, given the weight of the evidence against him, only someone who actually believes that an agreement with a demon will work could refuse to accept any aspects of the case against him. Perhaps he still believes that Lucifer will come to his aid, but unfortunately for the defendant, there are no deals to be had in these courts, and the devil, if he is anywhere, is in the detail. In court, Hussein showed a complete lack of respect for proceedings, and he behaved frankly very oddly. After he was found guilty and waiting for sentencing via the video link due to COVID, he was smirking, he put his hands behind his head as if lying back on a sun lounge, and he turned his chair 90 degrees to the left, so he was facing the window and away from the judge. During the trial itself, He kept asking for toilet breaks. He sat with his back to the trial judge, and he stared for long periods of time at the victim's family and the female court staff. When the paramedic who was first on the scene after the discovery of the bodies gave evidence, he made an L for loser sign with his fingers. His lawyer, in her closing speech, it was a tough gig, right? She referred to this, saying, "You've seen how he behaved in court. You may think at times his behaviour has been odd, but please judge him on the evidence, not on his behaviour in court, if you've noticed something out of the ordinary." Hussein was, of course, found guilty, and the judge, for his crimes, sent him to prison for 35 years. Speaking outside court, the sister's mum, Mina, said that justice had been done for her beautiful girls. On their killer, she said, "He's just an obnoxious human being. He's a broken being who, if he had not been caught, 4 other families may have been suffering what we have." DCI Simon Harding, the senior investigating officer, said after the case, "This has been a quite shocking case that will save all of us for many years to come, not least the awful way in which these 2 vibrant women met their deaths, but also Hussein's bizarre deluded fantasies that he should sacrifice the women in exchange for a lottery win. I strongly believe that he would have gone on to kill more women if he hadn't injured his hand in such a way that he did when he killed Bibaa and Nicole. It's very difficult for my team still to this day to comprehend that this 18-year-old boy, as he was at the time, could have carried out such savage attacks. He showed disrespect for everything, for the families, the support systems, the process, police, paramedics, everybody, and the jury. There is, I'm afraid, one last disturbing aspect to this case. 2 police officers, 48-year-old PC Denise Jaffa and 33-year-old PC Jamie Lewis, were charged with misconduct. They shared inappropriate photographs of the crime scene, causing distress to the family and general public. And incredible as it is to believe, these officers had posed for selfies next to the sisters' dead bodies. They also shared them on a WhatsApp group. For this, the 2 officers were sent to prison for 2 years and 9 months. There were other officers on that WhatsApp group who were just warned about their future conduct. Mina said in a victim impact statement, "Those police officers felt just so safe, so untouchable. They felt they would take photographs of our murdered daughters. Those police officers dehumanized our children." I'm afraid this isn't the only area where the police were found to be failing in this case. Separately, the Independent Office for Police Conduct looked at their response to the initial missing persons reports and found the level of service provided by the Met over the weekend when the sisters went missing was, and I quote, "below the standard that it should have been." So there we have it. 2 women with everything to live for, just out enjoying themselves, murdered in a random attack. It is so shocking. I find it hard to believe that it really happened, but of course it did. And the family and friends of Bibaa and Nicole have lived an utter nightmare from that moment onwards, not helped, I'm afraid, by the performance of some members of the police service. But just how many more people are there like Daniel Hussein, holed up at home as we speak, living in a dangerous virtual world, capable of such terrible attacks as we've heard about today? Thank you so much for watching this video. If you found it of interest, please watch one of my others. Until next time, I've been Adam Lloyd.